One source of market failure is ill-formed preferences. When we talk about ill-formed preferences, we mean they can be of two kinds. One, that consumers might not be fully informed about what would be beneficial or harmful to them. Another reason for ill-formed preferences might be that for some reason or other, due to a cognitive bias, for example, or due to the powerful role of emotions or some kind of psychobiological effect, that even if consumers are fully informed about the benefits or harms of particular products, for some reason they nonetheless fail to act in their own best interests. When a good or a product is deemed to be beneficial to consumers, but they don't purchase the quantities of it that they would if they were fully informed or if they were rational, then we call these kinds of goods merit goods. We say they have inherent merits built into them that should be but aren't necessarily taken account of by consumers. On the other hand, there are products which might be harmful to consumers, but they purchase nonetheless. We call these demerit products. They have inherent demerits about them. They're demeritorious. Even though the consumers might not be either fully aware of it or they are fully aware of it, but nonetheless persist in consuming the product. We can think of some examples of this sort of thing, and you should be able to think of some yourself. Back in the good old days, when cars and motorbikes were relatively newfangled things in Australia, seatbelts and motorcycle helmets were not widely utilised, even though we could say they have inherent merits in their consumption. That is, they tend to prevent people from dying when they get into an accident. So these we'd call merit goods. There are other kinds of merit goods as well that sometimes people don't purchase, not because they're ill-informed, but because they're simply irrational about it for some reason or other. So there are some people, for example, who refuse to be vaccinated against deadly viruses because they think there's some kind of government conspiracy that's involving brainwashing people through vaccinations or some nonsense like that. So this is just irrational thinking, which prevents the consumer from purchasing the product. Again, this would be a merit good. Or in the case of men, more generally, they often fail to see the doctor when they're sick. In this case, for some reason, men are behaving irrationally. We would classify doctor services in this case as a merit good. And of course there's also the demerit goods, and we can think of all sorts of examples of demerit goods that people consume despite the fact that those goods are harmful to the consumer. So obviously there's all sorts of hard drugs which are extremely harmful to consumers, including ice, for example, but also alcohol. Alcohol is in large quantities extremely harmful to the human brain. People sometimes irrationally engage in gambling, which they enjoy, but they have irrational beliefs about the possibility of winning the next jackpot, when of course the probability of them winning the next jackpot is infinitesimally small. And then there's other kinds of activities such as drag racing and all sorts of dangerous kinds of behaviour, swimming with sharks and things like that. And then there's other kinds of demeritorious goods which are harmful to people, but it's not so much they're ill-informed about them, but for some reason they become emotionally attached to them, despite the fact that they obviously harm people intellectually. For example, My Kitchen Rules or Kim Kardashian. So in graphical terms, let's see how we'll take the case of a merit good, motorbike helmets, how this would result in market failure. So here we've got the supply curve and the demand curve for motorbike helmets, and we can see that the free market equilibrium price and quantity is at $15, and there's the sale of 1,000 motorbike helmets over, let's say, a 6-month period or a year. Doesn't matter what time it is, as long as it's some time constraint. Anyway, let's say that the consumers of motorbike helmets, or the potential buyers, don't realize all of the benefits associated with wearing motorbike helmets. So there's some consumers, or there's some potential consumers of motorbike helmets who are not purchasing them because they don't realize how beneficial it is to them. They might be young people who are, risk lovers, or they can't assess risk in a sensible way, and so they don't buy the motorbike helmet despite the fact that it would save their lives. Now, what we now say is, if they were fully informed, rational individuals, what would the demand for motorbike helmets be? Well, we could say that it would be substantially larger. So we would push the demand curve for motorbike helmets up. And we can see there, we've got the rational demand curve, the rational marginal benefits that actually accrue to consumers, and assuming no one else is affected by it, the marginal social benefits of the purchase of motorbike helmets, if the consumers were rational and fully informed. In that case, the equilibrium price would be higher, and the equilibrium quantity, the allocatively efficient quantity bought and sold, would be 2,000, greater than the actual free market quantity. So we can see here that if the free market is left to itself, the price is lower, but more important than that, the allocatively efficient quantity bought and sold is less than it should be. So we would say that left to itself, the market will fail to produce the allocatively efficient quantity. The market will be a failure in that case.